It's popped up again. Harrison Butker has stirred up groupthink and the columnists and the woke culture that, well, you just can't have a goal of raising a family and that being the top priority amongst husband and wife. That's the overall sentiment of Harrison Butker. And what he was getting across as he gave another commencement speech at a college. He was most recently this past weekend at Benedictine College in Kansas. But this isn't the first time he's delivered and addressed college graduates. He did last year, which also stirred up columnists like Mike Freeman, who is with USA Today. He's the race and inequality editor in sports for USA Today. He wrote a column.
That's his title?
Yes, that's his title.
Wow.
He wrote a column bashing Butker and asking the Kansas City Chiefs, "Hey, where are you? Why haven't you responded?" He opens his column with this, a question. Are the Kansas City Chiefs okay with one of their players, kicker Harrison Butker, saying women belong as homemakers? The team has several women executive vice presidents who have careers outside of the kitchen. What do they think of this? The team has celebrated Women's History Month, not Women, you better get my dinner on the table month. That's how Freeman opens this and continues throughout that Butker's a key part of the Super Bowl championship team. He plays the most popular sport in the country. His words will carry, and while they have the waft of Archie Bunker's couch, they shouldn't be ignored. We should take every opportunity to push back against this type of extremist, Neanderthalic view.
Neanderthalic, what a word.
Of the world. And finally, Chad, just
that's how I refer to Davey.
Neanderthalic?
Yeah. It was such a Neanderthalic statement by you.
Butker represents a segment of the population that wants to go backwards, particularly with women's rights. These people are getting bolder and more hateful.
What do you mean, these people?
These people were bolder and more hateful. The goal is to wrench power from a society that's become more pluralistic and diverse and put it back in the hands of a small group of men. And I can tell you, in their universe, they aren't talking about men of color having all this power. Butker gives the entire game away with this part of his speech. Now, here's what he's saying. He references both speeches throughout this. So let's go back to last year first at the Georgia Institute of Technology. The antidote and the advice from Harrison Butker, kicker of the Kansas City Chiefs, in what is, I guess, a part of hate speech. His antidote is get married and start a family.
It is important to use today as an opportunity to take stock of your mission. Our culture is suffering. We all see it. It doesn't matter which political persuasion you sit on or whether you are a person of deep faith or not. Anyone with eyes can see that something is off. Studies have shown one of the many negative effects of the pandemic is that a lot of young adults feel a sense of loneliness, anxiety, and depression, despite technology that has connected us more than ever before. It would seem the more connected people are to one another, the more they feel alone. I'm not sure the root of this, but at least I can offer one controversial antidote that I believe will have a lasting impact for generations to come. Get married and start a family. Wow. I will say this is the most important ring I have right here. Having kicked the game-winning field goal in both the AFC Championship and the Super Bowl, I have received a great deal of praise for these successes. They just announced that this Super Bowl was the most watched football game of all time, and yet all of this happiness is temporary. And the truth is, none of these accomplishments mean anything compared to the happiness I have found in my marriage and in starting a family. My confidence as a husband and father, and yes, even as a football player, is rooted in my marriage with my wife, as we leave our mark on future generations by the children we bring into the world. How much greater of a legacy can anyone leave than that? Sadly, we are encouraged to live our lives for ourselves, to move from one thing to another with no long-term commitment, to have loyalty for nothing but ourselves and sacrifice only when it suits our own interests. This loneliness is rooted in the lies being sold about self-dependence and prioritizing our career over important relationships.
So he's advocating for marriage, partnerships, and family values.
And selflessness.
Push each other.
Selflessness over selfishness.
Pushing each other to achieve goals instead of individually going after and accomplishing your own goals first. Not living for yourself, but living for your relationship. Building a home that fosters values and morals. You know, how dare Harrison Butker mention this to college graduates? So let's fast forward to May 11th, where he gave a speech to Benedictine college graduates in Kansas and, well, stirred up at least Mike Freeman to write a column comparing Harrison Butker to antebellum days of the South, mentioning that he's mentioning race, he's mentioning his Butker hating LGBTQ, which Butker is not hating, he's pushing his religious values and morals
I don't
and
know
his
that
beliefs.
He's pushing
in
it as
that.
much as sharing his religious beliefs.
Well, he's done this he's talked on this in the past,
yeah.
and he's doing it again. And so are columnists like Mike Freeman, who took issue with Butker advocating for women to strive to be a part of the home. And if you go back a year ago, which we just played, he's also looking at it from the male perspective. Here's Butker this past weekend.
Ladies and gentlemen of the class of 2024, you are sitting at the edge of the rest of your lives. Each of you has the potential to leave a legacy that transcends yourselves and this era of human existence. In the small ways, by living out your vocation, you will ensure that God's church continues and the world is enlightened by your example. For the ladies present today, congratulations on an amazing accomplishment. You should be proud of all that you have achieved to this point in your young lives. I want to speak directly to you briefly because I think it is you, the women, who have had the most diabolical lies told to you. How many of you are sitting here now about to cross this stage and are thinking about all the promotions and titles you are going to get in your career? Some of you may go on to lead successful careers in the world, but I would venture to guess that the majority of you are most excited about your marriage and the children you will bring into this world. I can tell you that my beautiful wife, Isabel, would be the first to say that her life truly started when she began living her vocation as a wife and as a mother. I'm on this stage today and able to be the man I am because I have a wife who leans into her vocation. I'm beyond blessed with the many talents God has given me, but it cannot be overstated that all of my success is made possible because a girl I met in band class back in middle school would convert to the faith, become my wife, and embrace one of the most important titles of all, homemaker. She's the primary educator to our children. She's the one who ensures I never let football or my business become a distraction from that of a husband and father. She's the person that knows me best at my core, and it is through our marriage that, Lord willing, we will both attain salvation. I say all of this to you because I have seen it firsthand, how much happier someone can be when they disregard the outside noise and move closer and closer to God's will in their life. Isabel's dream of having a career might not have come true, but if you asked her today if she has any regrets on her decision, she would laugh out loud without hesitation and say, heck no. As a man who gets a lot of praise and has been given a platform to speak to audiences like this one today, I pray that I always use my voice for God and not for myself. Everything I am saying to you is not from a place of wisdom, but rather a place of experience. I am hopeful that these words will be seen as those from a man not much older than you, who feels it is imperative that this class, this generation, and this time in our society must stop pretending that the things we see around us are normal.
And there's the Harrison Butker this past weekend, which led to Freeman's column. Chiefs kicker Harrison Butker's speech was ugly. He's only part of a bigger problem. He in there says his wife's most important vocation is marriage and homemaker.
Yeah, homemaker.
Does that sound like a man who would also say his vocation is football? No. He would say his vocation would be husband and father.
And he said that in there. He said, a wife that keeps me focused on the most important part of who I am, which is husband and father.
So, Chad, when I read this today, I'm thinking of our conversation last week with the Brady roast, where cancel culture is dead as long as you're on stage making jokes. But if you're advocating based on your religious values, your religious beliefs, mentioning words that will trigger people like Mike Freeman, God's church, salvation, homemaker, and tying that in to a day of, let's just say May 15th, 1864, is ridiculous. That is where we are taking a huge step back. And that's where we have to call out crap like this, where it does. I don't know how you listen to Harrison Butker and say, you know what, I hate that. He's a part of the bigger problem. But I wonder if there's any issue with the ladies of perpetual indulgence.
Yeah.
In Los Angeles. The outcry for that was how dare there's any pushback about them honoring this wonderful group in Los Angeles for the Dodgers organization. Overall, the outlook and the view on where we are as a society is twisted and it's backwards. And at least Butker's standing up there saying we need a husband and wife, we need a two-parent home, and he's preached that too. And final thing, in the column, he goes on to say and write, the team thus far, he's pushing for the Chiefs to take a stand on this, which is on this. He wants the Chiefs to speak out against this as an organization. The team thus far has been silent about Butker's comments, which don't stop with his antiquated views of a woman's role in society. He also went on an anti-LGBTQ rant. Speaking of Pride Month, Butker said, quote, not the deadly sins sort of pride that has an entire month dedicated to it, but the true God-centered pride that's cooperating with the Holy Ghost to glorify Him. That's what Mike Freeman quoted as this rant.
A rant.
Against LGBTQ. Mike, he's simply stating his faith and his values, which, every American has the right to do. And it doesn't sound like to me this is hate speech at all. This is clickbait. This is, Chad, what I would say is grifting. And we see it every day on a different level where there's grandstanding that takes place for views on the world that Harrison Butker certainly wouldn't agree with. But because he doesn't agree with it, that's what makes it apparently so awful in the eyes of Mike Freeman, who thinks he just wants his wife and all women to stay at home and cook dinner, clean the house, take care of the kids, and make sure the husband is good to go. The vocation that Butker, at least how I take it, the number one vocation would be what takes place under the home, under the roof of the home. That's not the only vocation that he's advocating for. He's just putting his priorities where he wants to put his priorities, and so is his wife. Others do other things. And apparently, if you don't go along with the groupthink, you get columns written about you.
Well, I don't. There's so many areas to go in here. Okay, so I'm going to try to piece some of it together one by one, and we can go whatever direction we want to go, Hutton. I'm glad you brought this to the show with these videos to hear Harrison Butker, because
compared to this,
I do think it's very important to see and hear Harrison Butker deliver his commencement address as opposed to reading the words as translated by Mike Freeman in his column that I thought was just completely crap, quite frankly, throughout. And he's entitled to his opinion, and he can have his opinion on Harrison Butker, just like Harrison Butker can follow his Bible and his religion and talk about his opinion on things.
Sure, but the column starts with Mike Freeman telling the Chiefs what their opinion should be.
Right.
He wants the organization to come out against this.
Well, and this is where I really have an issue with a lot of the things that are going on. Here's a phrase that's always thrown out there: creating a narrative. This person is creating a narrative when they talk about this. This person is creating a narrative when they do that. That is always seen in a negative connotation, normally written by extremely woke writers when they're talking about something. Oh, well, we're creating a narrative around this, and we're trying to set things back 100 years, and we're trying to, put people of color back in their place and do all this stuff. That's sort of the way it goes. Why do we have to create a narrative that being a homemaker is something negative? Right? This really started with the women's liberation movement back in the 60s. When you think about that, if you wanted to have children and be a stay-at-home wife and mother, that became a negative thing. I don't know why that has to be such a negative thing. I agree with Harrison Butker that maybe the most important thing a person will do is if they raise children, trying to raise them the right way. If you want to truly make the world a better place, do your best to raise the next generation the best way possible. And look, that can go for aunts and uncles and caretakers and people who adopt. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to raise the next generation and do so in a healthy and respectful way. I don't think there's any world in which having two-parent homes will hurt America. So I'm going to throw that over here to the side, okay? Why would anyone be offended by talking about family values and discussing the need for more two-parent homes? Why is it seen by Mike Freeman, who is a black man, I believe, right?
Yes.
This is another thing. This is creating a narrative that if you harp on the need for fathers in the home, then you must be a racist. Because oftentimes it's African-American households that are destroyed by a lack of fathers in the home. So now you're racist for pointing that out. No, that's not being a racist. That's pointing out fact.
Well, and he's saying the goal is to wrench power from a society that's become more diverse. That's what he wrote. That's what Freeman wrote about this commencement address. I don't know how you gain that, or how you get that from the comments that we just listened to.
I would just say that it's good for anyone of any color, race, religion, what have you, to have two parents in the house that are both trying their best and being responsible to raise their children in a civilization in America where they can grow up to be contributing citizens to that, whatever country you're in, wherever you are. That's a positive. I don't think you're going to find anyone that is sane that's going to tell you that's a negative. It's absolutely a positive. So what Harrison Butker is saying there, this is not creating a narrative. That's stating fact. And there are countless people who can attest to that and tell you that that is, in fact, that's fact. And that's something that we can all say. Talking about it being a rant, him pointing out what the Bible says about homosexuality is not a rant when he says it in passing. Now, preaching hate, if you want to go down that road, if someone were to go up there and say, not only is this a sinful lifestyle, but you need to do something about it, or you should treat gay people differently than you treat other people, or any of that, that's a different discussion for a different day. I didn't hear Harrison Butker say anything along those lines in what he was saying. I don't understand how there's so many universal truths, right, that we can agree on. Cancer is bad. Okay, cancer bad. Ice cream good, unless you're lactose intolerant. Ice cream good. Two-parent homes good? Can't we? I'm not Ron Burgundying this thing with a question mark at the end. Why can't that be a universal truth? Family values good. I think that's a good thing for society. To strive to be that, to strive to be what Harrison Butker is talking about. And if you want to talk about feminism and not shaming women and empowering women and doing all these things, you must empower women to make decisions that you don't agree with because it's their decision. So if you are going to blast someone for saying that their strongest and most significant vocation is being a homemaker, you might want to talk to the woman that's the homemaker that does value that and does understand how difficult that job is and does understand how important that job is before trying to create a narrative that being a homemaker is bad because they didn't selfishly pursue their own career outside of the home. There's nothing wrong with that if that's what a woman chooses to do.
Yeah, but you just can't use...
And I don't think Harrison Butker's wife was forced into a life of servitude to stay at home.
No.
And she is having to blank out her past and her ambitions of being a whatever she wanted to be in the professional space to be a homemaker. And so why is Mike Freeman, who is this progressive, liberal, feminist, defender of all women, going after a woman who wants to do this? That I cannot come to grips with.
But he's not going after the woman that wants to do this. He's going after the Kansas City Chiefs for not speaking out against it. And wanting everyone else to speak out against Butker's opinion and beliefs, which include his comments like this, Chad, which Freeman says is the goal is to wrench power from a society that's become more diverse. This is Butker as part of his speech to the men, to the gentlemen here today. Part of what plagues society is this lie that's been told to you that men are not necessary in the home or in our communities. As men, we set the tone of the culture. And when that is absent, disorder, dysfunction, and chaos set in. The absence of men in the home is what plays a large role in the violence we see all around the nation. Be unapologetic in your masculinity. Fight against the cultural emasculation of men. Do hard things. Never settle for what's easy. Then Freeman adds in this. That's from Butker. Freeman says, there is no emasculation of men. It's not happening. It never has happened. It's a totally fabricated thing. None of this has to do with the loss of rights. No one is being emasculated. Men are not losing power. Women don't need to stay in the kitchen unless they want to. But there are people like Butker who want to take America back in time. Not the majority, but enough. I mean, there are men who don't even know if they can hold a door anymore for a woman. There are people that believe that men should compete against women, and that should be okay. That's absolutely taking place. But apparently that's too alpha for Mike Freeman. And his views, because they're not in line with Freeman, well, that's just not good. That others must speak out against it, including the former commissioner of Kansas City, Justice Horn is his name, says that Butker doesn't represent Kansas City, nor has he ever. Kansas City has always been a place that welcomes, affirms, and embraces our LGBTQ plus community members. Harrison Butker can't represent Kansas City, but literally anyone that embraces the LGBTQ plus members in society, they're representative of Kansas City. So says Justice Horn, the former commissioner of Kansas City. That's ridiculous. That's nonsense. And from what I heard from Butker there, it doesn't sound like he's saying anything that's nonsensical.
It's also nonsense to act like the emasculation of men is not taking place in American popular culture.
Freeman's doing it right there.
Yeah, it's right there.
But he adds in there. It's not about. He throws in there that you better believe it's not about the black men in America. It's just this small group that Butker's speaking about. He wants to add that in there too.
Well, it's not right. Of course he does.
Right.
Let me just go ahead and say what he won't say, and what he's trying to say, and what he probably. I'm sure Mike Freeman tells all of his friends when they're talking, but he didn't quite put it in print. If you support Donald Trump, you are a Nazi. Harrison Butker wants to go back to slave days and is in fact a Nazi also. and everyone that supports Harrison Butker or that talks about these things are also Trump supporters. Henceforth, they are also Nazis. This is what Mike Freeman thinks about conservatives, about the right wing, about anyone who voted for Donald Trump. He's not coming out and saying it because that might actually get him in trouble, but this is honestly what he believes, okay? I'll go ahead and say it. There are Nazis that support Donald Trump. There's also complete left-wing lunatic morons that support Joe Biden, okay? Can we all just get together and say that?
Right.
That there is a small percentage on each side that you can say that about? I don't listen to Harrison Butker and think Nazi. I think Christian. I think family man. I think someone who is strong in his own convictions and is communicating those convictions. That's what I think about Harrison Butker. There may be things I actually disagree with Harrison Butker about that he may be even a little bit too old school about, right? That all of us might disagree with.
But do you think he's a racist?
No. And I also don't think that he should not be able to speak the way he feels about these things, because pretty much everything he's saying in that speech would be good for America.
And but Freeman says everything he's saying in the speech is taking us back to the 1950s, and and that Butker represents a segment of the population that wants to go backwards. And then he adds in, these people are getting bolder and more hateful, and he goes on to say, and I can tell you, in their universe, they aren't talking about men of color having all this power.
Yeah, I think I think Harrison Butker would equally like white fathers and black fathers to stay home and help raise their kid. That's not racist.
Father.
Right. That's not racist. I don't think that Harrison Butker is out there trying to prop up some sort of system that's going to keep one race down and the other one up. That's not what he's talking about.
Right.
He is quoting directly from things from the Bible. That's what he's doing. And there's nothing in the Bible that talks about separating the races and making one less than the other. That's not what Jesus preached. And that's what Harrison Butker is trying to preach. So it's again, Hutton, we want to blend everything into something very simple. Mike Freeman hears those words and thinks, this guy is against everything that I believe and everything that I've been taught. And if you want to claim that Harrison Butker has been indoctrinated by the church or whatever, fine. I would claim that Mike Freeman and many others have been indoctrinated by another extreme ideology when it comes to a lot of these things. But give me a break. There's nothing this guy is saying that would have a negative effect on society. Nothing. And now he wants the Chiefs to punish him over it? I mean, if the Chiefs actually speak on this, other than we support Harrison Butker.
They didn't respond.
Well, if they say anything other than we support Harrison Butker, I'm going to be very, very ashamed of the Chiefs.
They shouldn't say anything. Harrison Butker was asked to give an address to college graduates again
at a Catholic college.
Sure, at Benedictine College in Kansas. Okay. Now, would Freeman be writing as the editor? Let me get his title right, Chad. As the editor of Race and Inequality in Sports for USA Today, is he going to say that, well, stop telling us what to do if someone stood up there and was all about the rights of transgender playing in sports against women? He's not going to speak out against that.
No.
But
is he going to speak out against?
But if you mention God's church and salvation, then all of a sudden it's it's a detriment to society.
Does Mike Freeman have a bunch of pieces on anti-Semitism on college campuses? He's certainly got opinions on this Christian-based speech at a commencement address. Has he spoken out against that? Has he written about that? I highly doubt it.
Yeah,
it's
that if a player got up there and did this on as long as Freeman agreed with it, he's not going to ask the Chiefs for comment.
Yeah, and what he said about the addressing the women of the crowd, saying, I'm sure you've been working hard for this degree, but most of you are probably more excited about being a wife and bringing kids into the world and being a mother. I don't know. I mean, the Benedictine College student body, that probably is the case at a small Catholic school.
Well, but
it may not be. And he may be, putting that idea onto some that aren't thinking about that at all right now, and that's totally fine. I'm also going to tell the Mike Freemans of the world and everyone else, there are a ton of women in college that their main goal is to find a husband and have a family. And guess what? That's fine. That's also fine.
Yeah.
If you want to go be a female CEO,
of course,
great, go do it.
And you can do both.
I'm supporting you to do that. I'm also supporting the women that are finishing up their 4th year of college that are thinking, I really want to start a home. I want to be a homemaker, a word that was used by Harrison Butker that apparently has a very negative connotation according to Mike Freeman. That's also fine for women that want to get married, have a family, raise kids in a Christian household, or in a 2-parent household, and they're going to be doing a heck of a lot of work. I'll argue to say the homemaker that Mike Freeman is talking about, that Harrison Butker should not be saying her best vocation or most difficult vocation or most important is being a homemaker, works a hell of a lot harder than Mike Freeman and works a hell of a lot harder than me and a lot of other people. And that's great. That's great if that's what they choose to do.
Well, and you can.
Why do we have to put whatever we think on someone and say, this is the way you must be and you must think?
Yeah. Well, Chad, it's just where we are in society.
Isn't that the opposite of feminism?
Yes.
Like if you're Mike Freeman on the other side saying, you must be independent, you must be selfish,
but the idea,
you must do what you want to do that's right for you and nothing else, unless that's getting married early and being a homemaker and being a mom. In that case, don't do it because we'd rather you pursue your professional goals.
Well, you can be both.
Of course.
You can be both. And that's...
Or one or the other, and that's fine.
Yes, but that's what's lost here is the idea that... I mean, I can't understand why it's... The common sense of what Butker's saying is what's been put first. Do we really think that if Harrison Butker's wife, was it Isabella maybe, wants to make her hobby into, turn her hobby into a moneymaker, you think Butker's not going to support her in that?
He will.
What he's saying is she's going to be the mother and the wife and family first. That's what I hear when I hear Harrison Butker speak.
And guess what? And she may do that for a while and want to do something else, like you said, Hutton. Those kids are going to leave the house and go off to college or go do whatever they're going to do. She may want to pick something else up then and go work and go do that when Harrison Butker's staying at home. Harrison Butker could retire and take the kids through high school and watch them at home. And I think Harrison Butker would be fine with that if he was able to do that and his wife was going back to work. Everything doesn't have to be just one thing. If we can get away from everything being one thing, this person said this, so it must mean that. If we can agree that people are all different things, and maybe someone that we disagree with politically actually has some pretty solid points about family life and how it could help our society, we would be a much happier place. We would be a much more productive society.
We can't be happy because Mike Freeman sees Harrison Butker as part of a bigger problem whenever he wants to have this discussion, whenever he wants to speak to college graduates.
I think anytime you live your life blaming someone else for everything, for all that ails you, and not ever willing to take personal responsibility and or admit there could be other factors contributing to it. Like in this case, it's white people's fault, right, that this is happening. How dare this white man talk about the need for 2-parent households
or have a religion
and for fathers to be around?
Yeah, believe in have beliefs that tell him to live his life a certain way.
Right. I mean, come on.
It's always going to be dark and sinister.
It's not all one thing. It's not all dark and sinister.
No.
It's not all ice cream cones and rainbows either. It's never just one thing. Just have the discussion and go back and listen to what Harrison Butker said and listen to it with a smart ear and tell me one thing he said that's incorrect. Whether you disagree with his opinion or not, I'm not catching a lot of things right there that would be awful for society if people live like that. Oh, you mean we should live selflessly and we should work to have good families and we should work to be good parents if we have kids? And okay,
just
great.
Be a good human being.
Great.
That's where I come down. Like, be a good human being. Live your life the way you want to live your life based on your beliefs. And if you believe in that, then there's nothing wrong with what Harrison Butker is saying at all. Sounds like they have a pretty good marriage.
Yeah, I would say so.
Doesn't sound like there's much hate going on underneath that roof.
Not a lot of turmoil.
No, but there's this.
Well, and the
idea narrative
that
you're right, Chad. That's the word. The narrative that is being pushed here is this is nothing but a hate speech.
Yeah,
this is a rally.
He's seen as Trump. Like,
this is
I
a
think
rally.
that it's just. I've gone back and forth with this. Donald Trump caused a lot of people to go completely insane, and now they see everything as Donald Trump. And when I hear Harrison Butker, I do not hear Donald Trump.
No.
I hear someone who loves people. I see someone to infer that he's racist in any way is crazy to me.
But he works that in.
Or there's any type of race element to it. I do not think that at all.
It's a part of a
when I listen to Harrison Butker speak.
A segment of the population that he's lumped in with that. He's lumped in with the racist based on Mike Freeman's opinion of what he heard there.
And I think this whole again creating a narrative around, if you're a homemaker and you're this, well, maybe you're lesser than women who stayed independent for a long time, didn't get married, pursued career, did all these things. It's also, you're in a way teaching a generation of young women to not respect their mothers as much who were homemakers, who were in the home. They're like, oh, you should have done more with your life. You should have been selfish. To which that mom would say, well, if I was selfish, you wouldn't have had an after-school snack every day. You wouldn't have had a ride to softball practice or basketball practice or cheerleading camp or all these things. We're so backwards in so many ways.
We're coming off of Mother's Day weekend. And,
what a Mother's Day treat this column was for Mike Freeman.
I know. Thankfully, I'm adopted, and I grew up in a two-parent household that I would not trade for the world. Right place, right time for me. I have so many friends, though, that tell stories around Mother's Day. Chad, you and I know many in the media that will tell on shows like their story about how their mom worked 2 jobs.
Yeah.
Or, at 13, that guy was the man of the house.
Because their dad left.
Yeah, because the mom was gone. You better believe the mother of those kids wanted to be at home with her kids.
Yep. They would rather be there than having to work to support their kids.
Right. Yeah, but that's part of the problem now is just the idea that one can't stay home with the kids and have a family and put family first. I think that's the point I'm getting across is that all of a sudden the Chiefs have to issue a statement. According to Mike Freeman, it's appalling that they haven't commented on Harrison Butker's belief that, family and husband, wife, father, mother should come before career aspirations as you walk across the stage and receive a diploma.
I would hope the response to most people seeing these words or hearing these words from Harrison Butker
doesn't mean you can't have career aspirations.
Yeah, but I would hope the response from most are, he's making some really good points. That's what I hope. Even whether you agree or disagree with most of what Harrison Butker says, I would hope you listen to what he says about the family and about the importance of, fathers being fathers and mothers being mothers and doing the best for their kids. And the takeaway would be, well said, good points. I think that would probably help a lot of situations. Hey, I see this all the time, just in my limited experience in coaching.
Yes.
And being around different families and being around different family structures. It makes a difference. And I've seen the single moms who have to work the multiple jobs and have to drop their kid off at practice to have a babysitter to go do something for work or to go get groceries during that time or do whatever it may be because there's not a man around and they're doing it all on their own. And it breaks my heart. And it affects the kid. And it's typically not in a good way. And it's sad.
It is.
So what Harrison Butker is saying is 1,000% true, and I've seen it.